up, YouTube? This is Jacob from International Precision Engineering, and we are in the White Sands Desert. We're overlooking the dunes here, and it's actually not, well, it's not sand as we think of it. It's gypsum instead of quartz or silica sand. It is white, and it is very soft, very powdery. But we're here because I thought this would be a good lead-in for one of our next project, or a project that I'm about to start, a kind of a pet project on electrolysis and making alkali water. So the location we're actually at is Alkali Flat in, again, the White Sands National Park. But let me show you around before we get into the project. This is a good place to discuss the difference between a molecular compound, or a compound, a bond of two molecules at the atomic level, like water is a good example. H2O, the hydrogens are bonded to the oxygen, which makes, a compound, makes water. There's a couple other sort of differences. There's a mixture, which, for example, this is gypsum. If I mix salt, dry salt, rock salt, or table salt in with this gypsum, it'll look kind of the same. This is white, table salt's white, but it's not going to be bonded chemically, right? It's just going to be like dirt, a collection of stuff that's just there, or like a bunch of Legos in a bucket. They're different, but they're together, and that's a mixture. A suspension, for example, is if I took normal beach sand and put it into water and stirred it up, and the water gets all murky and it looks like it's together, but what's happening is that sand, the beach sand, is floating in the water, in between the molecules of the water, and as they vibrate, there's enough energy to keep them suspended, or keep a certain size suspended for temperature, and there's equations for that. But eventually what's going to happen is, starting with the larger particles first, they're going to settle out as the water sits still. The big particles are going to settle out, and then it's going to get hazy, and then even over time the smaller particles will fall out. So that murky, sandy water is a suspension. So there's the compound water, for example. There's the mixture, which would be salt and sugar is another example. There's the suspension, which is just something floating in the mix of something in two different phases, liquid and solid. That's a suspension. And a solution is actually a chemical interaction. So, for example, salt into water makes a solution. So the salt actually ionizes, and at the atomic level floats in the water. So that will not settle out if you leave it on the table. It will always be salt water until you chemically or physically take that out, separate it. So with this gypsum, it actually dissolves in water, so it makes a solution. if I get this gypsum wet, it will dissolve in the water and run right through whatever medium, and it'll stay there until either the water is evaporated or, you know, there's some other chemical interaction that takes place. Just wanted to discuss those differences because in our next project we're going to be dealing with electrolysis and water. So using an electrolyte to chemically separate something into different components. So like we were talking about solutions, coming back to the White Sands Desert here, the little bit of precipitation that makes it over this mountain range and falls in this flat here is going to hit the sand, and the sand's going to dissolve in the water to some degree. So yeah, if the water's fast flowing down these slopes, then yeah, it'll take, just like if you had some sugar in the bottom of your coffee and you stir it, it doesn't all just disappear instantly. It takes some time, but ultimately some of it's going to dissolve and some of it's going to run down so down these slopes into these valleys and then sit in these basins here and collect. But the ratio of water evaporating to water falling is much more, and that's why these gypsum dunes are here, and that's why this is one of the only places in the world where you have white sand dunes, and especially with water soluble sand, right? I hope you enjoyed this tour. I think on the way out I'll stop and show you a little bit of a higher vantage point of what this valley is here and sort of a little bit of the geography here, and show you sort of a higher point of these mountains right now. I know the sun's there, so on the way out of here I'll stop and show you. There's a good spot, and it's actually overlooking a military base, but I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know what I should discuss about that or not. But anyway, this White Sands is actually a military missile range, and we are smack dab in the middle of it. Hope they got the memo that we're here. What we're looking at here, what you're looking at, is a giant missile, but more importantly what I wanted to show was this valley here. And White Sands is down in this valley right around the end of this mountain that you can see just off to the left of your camera, and I'll do a pan shot so you can see a little bit more of this. But off to the right is an observatory, and right in front of me behind the camera there is this mountain range. That's part of the reason why White Sands is there. So what happens is the wind comes swirling up over these mountains and swirls right behind it, and it doesn't blow the sand away, so it just makes it in dunes right behind that. And if you look at an aerial photo, I'll show one. All the dunes basically hide right behind this mountain range right here. And for the same reason that observatory is right there, it's sort of shielded from the weather here, and you know, it's nice. I don't know if you can see too well, but behind me is just a real nice vantage point of this valley here, and you can see it really well from here. But the little bit of precipitation that does fall into this valley, it doesn't go anywhere. It sheds off the hills and then soaks into the ground. So what ends up happening is, even though the gypsum sand does dissolve in the water and does run off, it doesn't go anywhere. So again, we're in the low point of this valley. There's a 3-foot thick, I think it's 3 foot thick layer basically of dry gypsum. So even if it rains and washes the gypsum away, it doesn't go anywhere. So it just sits in the bottom of the valley, and then the wind just stirs it up and makes more sand. So I thought this was a good vantage point, and let me show you a pan all around. There's some jagged mountains over here. When you're sort of panning, all the snow caps are behind me here, and it's, what is this? This is January, and right now, so there's snow up there. And White Sands in perspective here is right behind this mountain peak, just to the left of the frame. So the Missile is a good orientation. This road going down, I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but this road going down almost points right to White Sands. It's just to the left of that road. Again, right behind this mountain range. So let me give you that pan shot. But anyway, hope you enjoyed looking at the sand, and let's head into the shop to continue our project.